Family in Crisis Episode 1, Roots and Wings. The Maryland air was crisp, laced with the early chill of autumn. Emeka stepped onto the porch, wrapped in his Ankara robe, a steaming cup of Lipton tea in hand. It was a Saturday, but his body still woke up at 5:30 a.m., like it had done every day since he was a boy in Enugu. Inside, Adaze was already humming. Gospel music floated through the house as she swept the living room with a rhythm only mothers knew, where prayer, melody, and motion were one. Their house was small, but it was home. Nigerian flags, carved wooden masks, and family photos lined the walls. This house was more than shelter. It was a reminder of where they came from and why they had left. The tension begins. Upstairs, 15-year-old Chiamaka stood in front of the mirror, frowning at the wrapper her mother had laid out for the church's Youth Culture Day. Bright orange with gold patterns, it screamed village girl to her. "Why can't I just wear jeans?" she asked, walking into the kitchen. "Everyone else will." Adaze looked up. "It's Igbo Cultural Day, not fashion parade. You will wear it," Chiamaka groaned. "But it's embarrassing. Nobody at church talks like this. Nobody even cares about all this traditional stuff." Emeka entered, pausing long enough to hear the tone in her voice. "Nen, your culture is not something to be ashamed of. It is your root. If you throw it away, the wind will carry you anywhere." "I'm not in Nigeria anymore," she said, grabbing a slice of bread. "I just want to fit in." "You were not born to fit in," Adaze said, her voice calm but firm. "You were born to stand out with dignity." School versushum. Later that week, Chiamaka stood awkwardly in the school cafeteria while her classmates laughed at a TikTok of someone imitating an African parent. "Good evening, sir. Good evening, ma," one girl mocked in a fake accent. "Is this how you people greet in your house too, Chia?" Chiamaka laughed a little too loudly, even though her stomach twisted. When one girl asked her what her name meant, she shrugged. "It's just a name." That evening at dinner, Emeka asked the children what their names meant, as he often did. "Kenechukwu," Emeka said to his son. "Means what?" "And Chiamaka?" He turned to his daughter. Chiamaka hesitated. "God is beautiful," Adaze nodded. "And if you forget what your name means, you'll forget who gave it to you." A mother's fire. Later that night, Adaze entered Chiamaka's room. Her daughter was on her phone, but she set it down. "I saw how you avoided your name today. How you avoid your traditions. Do you know what breaks my heart?" Adaze sat on the edge of the bed. "I carried you on my back while walking through muddy roads to fetch water. I sang you lullabies in Igbo. I crossed oceans to give you a future. But now you are ashamed of where you come from?" Chiamaka's eyes welled up. "It's not like that, Mom. It's just hard. I'm always different." Adaze wiped a tear from her daughter's cheek. "You are different. That's your strength, not your shame. Let the world twist. We will not bend. We will keep the fire burning." Closing scene. That Sunday, Chiamaka stepped into church wearing her wrapper and gilet. It still felt strange. But as the drums echoed and the choir began to sing in Igbo, something shifted. She saw her parents' eyes light up with pride, and for a brief, quiet moment, she wasn't torn between two worlds. She belonged to both. Episode 2, Lost in Translation. It was quiet at the dinner table, apart from the soft clink of cutlery and the ticking clock on the wall. The food was hot, bitter leaf soup and pounded yam, but the atmosphere felt cold. Keen pushed the food around his plate without taking a bite. Emeka noticed. He always noticed. "You've barely touched your food," he said, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "I'm not that hungry," Keen mumbled. Adaze paused mid-chew. "Are you sick?" "I'm fine," Keen replied. "Just tired." But he wasn't tired. He was torn. The drift. At school, Keen felt like two different people. In church, he was the dutiful son, the pastor's helper, the boy who recited scripture. But at school, he sat beside kids who asked hard questions. "Don't you think religion was created to control people? How do you even know the Bible isn't just a bunch of stories?" At first, he tried to argue. But the question stuck, and he didn't have all the answers. Now, when he walked into church, the songs felt distant. The sermons felt heavy. And prayer? It was like shouting into silence. Hidden doubt. One night, Adaze walked past Keen's room and saw the light still on. She peeked in and saw him scrolling through a YouTube debate, Atheist versus Pastor, the truth about religion. She didn't say anything, just closed the door softly, but her heart pounded. Later, she found Emeka on the porch. "Keen is changing," she whispered. "He's questioning everything. I can feel it." Emeka nodded. "Then it's time we stop preaching at him and start walking with him." The breaking point. It all came to a head one Sunday morning. "Keen, get ready for church," Adaze called. "I'm not going," Keen said, coming down the stairs in a hoodie and sneakers. Adaze blinked. "What do you mean?" "I'm tired of pretending. I don't even know if I believe any of it anymore." Silence. Emeka stood slowly. "So now you're the judge of truth," he said calmly, "because your teachers asked a few questions?" Keen's voice cracked. "I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I just don't want to follow something blindly. What if? What if it's not real? Adai's lips trembled. Do you think your father and I are fools? That we built our lives on lies? I don't know, Keen shouted. That's the problem. I don't know what to believe anymore. Faith in the furnace. Emeka didn't raise his voice. He simply sat down. Keen, when I was your age, soldiers came to my village and burned homes. We hid in the bush for days. It was my faith that carried me. I have buried friends, lost jobs, and crossed an ocean with nothing but a suitcase and a prayer. You think this faith is just a Sunday activity? Keen looked down. It is not wrong to question, my son, Emeka continued, but never walk away from the fire that has kept you warm all your life, just because you're still learning how it burns. An honest start. That evening, Keen walked into the kitchen. Adai's was washing dishes, her back to him. Mom, he said quietly, can we talk? She turned slowly. He looked exhausted, not physically, but spiritually. I don't want to stop going to church, he said. I just need help understanding. Not judgment, not lectures, just answers. Adai's wiped her hands and hugged him. Then we'll walk through it together. No shame, no pressure, just truth, one step at a time. Closing scene. Later that night, Emeka found Keen in the living room, flipping through his Bible, slowly, unsure but searching. The fire hadn't gone out. It was just flickering, waiting for wind. Episode 3, Bridges and Battles. It started with a phone call. Hello, this is Miss Thomas from Ridgewood High. We'd like to schedule a meeting with you regarding Chiamaka. Adai's paused, the wooden spoon in her hand hovering over the pot of okra soup. Is she all right? A culture misunderstood. The meeting was short, awkward, and wrapped in polite tension. Miss Thomas folded her hands. Chiamaka mentioned some disciplinary methods at home that raised concern with another staff member. We just want to ensure she's in a safe space. Emeka's brow furrowed. Disciplinary methods? Like what? She said she's expected to kneel when she greets. That sometimes she is asked to stay in a room in silence when she misbehaves. She also mentioned being corrected firmly, emotionally and verbally. Adai's raised an eyebrow. That is how we discipline with love. We don't beat, we don't abuse, but we do correct. The counselor shifted in her seat. In some cases, correction can feel like coercion to a child. Emeka leaned forward. Let me ask you something, Ma. Do you know what it takes to raise a child who still respects their elders? Who knows where they come from? In a country that celebrates rebellion as independence? There was silence. Chiamaka's guilt. That night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Chiamaka sat on her bed, curled into herself. She hadn't meant for things to go this far. All she'd done was vent to a teacher she trusted. Mom thinks I don't love her, she whispered into the phone. I just said I didn't like kneeling. I didn't know they'd call CPS. Her best friend on the other end tried to comfort her, but it didn't help. Downstairs, Adai sat on the couch, eyes red from silent tears. They see our love as violence, our values as oppression. Emeka put an arm around her. They don't understand our fire days. They only feel the heat and think it's danger. The visit. A week later, a Child Protective Services officer arrived at their door. Routine check. That's what they called it. Emeka answered calmly, offered them tea, showed them the home. Adai stood with poise, answering every question with grace. Chiamaka watched from the stairs, her heart sinking. She had never seen her parents look so exposed. After the visit, Adai sat her down. You have a right to feel, to express, but this world will always paint us with a brush they made for someone else. I didn't mean to betray you, Chiamaka whispered. Adai touched her chin. You didn't betray us. You reminded us how fragile our fire is, but we will keep it burning anyway. Rebuilding the bridge. Days later, Emeka visited the school. Not to argue, but to educate. He spoke to the counselors and teachers, not about discipline, but about cultural dignity. Raising a child with values is not oppression. Teaching respect is not emotional harm. We are not trying to break our children. We are trying to make them strong enough to stand in a world that has forgotten how. Closing scene. That night, Chiamaka came into the kitchen and wrapped her arms around her mother. I wore the wrapper today. The red one with the gold trim. Adai's turned, surprised. It's Cultural Week at school, and I want them to know I'm not ashamed anymore. Emeka smiled as he walked in. So, the fire is catching. Yes, Chiamaka said, and this time, I'm the one keeping it burning. Episode 4, The Fire and the Ashes. It was a cold Thursday night when the call came in. Keen's voice on the phone was shaky. Mom, I need you to come pick me up. Adai sat upright, still holding her sewing needle. Where are you? The words hit like thunder, or fallout. Emeka didn't speak during the car ride. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Adai sat stiffly, praying under her breath. They arrived to find Keen sitting in a small interview room, head bowed. He's not being charged, the officer said. But he was in the car when his friend tried to shoplift. We had to bring everyone in for questioning. Back home, Emeka didn't yell. That would have been easier. He simply said, go to your room, and then sat in the living room, silent. Adai joined him. This is what we feared, she whispered. That the world would swallow them. No, Emeka said quietly. The world didn't swallow him. He walked into IIT, Chiamaka's mistake. The next night, Chiamaka was supposed to be at a study group. But when Adaze opened her Instagram by chance, she saw a blurry story tagged, Chia in a dark room, red solo cup in hand, music blaring. The caption read, "She finally turned up." Adaze felt like her heart stopped. An hour later, when Chiamaka walked in, the lights were on and her parents were waiting. "You lied," Emeka said. "I just wanted to go to one party. One," she shouted. "I'm always the weirdo. I'm tired of being perfect for you two." "No one asked you to be perfect," Adaze said, tears in her eyes. "We only asked you to remember who you are." The burnout. That night, Emeka sat alone on the porch. For the first time he looked tired, truly tired. The kind of exhaustion only a parent knows. The weight of giving everything and still feeling like you're losing. Adaze joined him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "Maybe we're too hard," she said softly. "Maybe we're not hard enough," he replied. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Emeka whispered, "We crossed oceans to build this fire. We've prayed, taught, fought, but it's like the wind is too strong now." Adaze shook her head. "No, fire doesn't die from wind. It dies when there's no more fuel." She turned to him. "So we feed it again. Not with rules, not with shouting, with presence, with prayer, with patience." The turning point. Later that weekend, Keane found an old photo album tucked in the closet. Pictures of his father as a boy in Enugu, of Adaze fetching water barefoot, of their wedding, modest but full of joy. He stared for a long time. Then, without a word, he walked to his father and handed him the album. "I didn't know how much you gave up," he said. Emeka looked up, eyes soft. "We didn't give it up. We invested it in you." Chiamaka's quiet return. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I let the noise get louder than your voice." Adaze knelt beside her. "The world will always be loud, but when you know who you are, you don't have to shout to be heard." Closing scene. That evening, for the first time in a long time, they prayed together, hands joined, eyes closed, hearts open. The fire was weak, but it was still burning, and that was enough. Episode 5, The Return. The house felt different. Not louder, not quieter, just lighter, as if something had shifted, lifted. It had been a month since the chaos. No more police calls, no more slammed doors. The silence now was full of peace instead of pain. On this Sunday morning, sunlight streamed through the windows. The smell of fried plantain and eggs drifted from the kitchen. And for the first time in a long while, everyone woke up early, not because they were forced, but because they wanted to. Keane's restoration. Keane stood in front of his mirror, adjusting the tie Emeka had taught him how to knot when he was 12, Bible in hand. Not because it was expected, but because it was time. He wasn't sure when exactly the change began. Maybe it was that quiet night flipping through the old photo album, or the way his parents never gave up on him, even when he pulled away. He had started attending Bible study again, quietly. No announcements, no posts, just presence. Now, he was being asked to share a short message at youth service. He looked at his reflection and whispered, "Lord, I don't have all the answers, but I want to know you. I want to walk with you." Chiamaka's rebirth. Meanwhile, Chiamaka stood beside Adaze in the kitchen, rolling dough for meat pies. She had started asking questions, not the angry kind, but the curious kind. Why did she always wear white on Sundays? What do Proverbs really mean? Adaze smiled with every question. The fire was spreading again. At church, Chiamaka wore her wrapper and a simple gold necklace shaped like Africa. After service, she stayed behind to mentor the younger girls who were just as torn as she once was. She shared her story without shame. You don't have to be embarrassed by your name, or your family, or your roots. That's where your power is. The circle rebuilt. After church, the family sat around the dinner table. The laughter was real. The food was plenty. The air was light. Then Emeka stood and cleared his throat. "I want to share something with you all," he said. "When we left Nigeria, I carried 3 things with me: a Bible, a wooden spoon from my mother, and a charcoal sketch of my village. I kept them because I wanted to remember who I was, and who I hoped you'd become." He reached into a drawer and pulled out the Bible, worn, creased, but still whole. He handed it to Keane. "Now it's yours." Then he turned to Chiamaka. "And your mother wants to teach you how to make your grandmother's special stew." Adaze smiled. "With pepper you measure by spirit, not by spoon." Everyone laughed. Final scene, the fire lives on. That night, Chiamaka sat writing in her journal. Keane sat on the porch reading Proverbs. They had not been perfect. They had stumbled. They had almost lost their way. But they remembered. And in a world still spinning with confusion, their home remained, a place of truth, of love, of legacy, a place where the fire kept burning.